Hi, welcome to the DRH show where I have wide-ranging conversations with fascinating people. We talk about all things psychology, mental health, and wellness. Today, I'm joined by a budding entrepreneur and bullying campaigner, Oliver Hodgson. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, good morning, Dennis. How are you doing?
I'm good, and thank you for joining me today. I know you're extremely busy, but it's a pleasure having you here. I want to say that first. It's a pleasure having you here on the DRH show. Now, to kick this off, Oliver, if you could tell us about your background, your trajectory in life, and how you ended up doing what you're doing. I'm already quite familiar with your story because I first saw you on Great British Breakfast in GB News. But share to us your interesting story.
Yes, so I grew up in Cumbria, where I am today, and I really struggled. I transitioned to secondary school from primary school, and I really struggled with that transition. And one thing when I came to secondary school that really affected me was the bullying and perhaps not being your typical lad. I really struggled with kind of being the odd one out and not having everybody like you, I suppose, and everybody had something to say for themselves. However, on the flip side of that, from a very young age, I've always been interested in business, in live events, and public relations and the media landscape. And so when I kind of left school about 2.5 years ago now, I was homeschooled for a little bit, and then along came this thing called COVID. And I had amassed previously years and years and years of work experience, placements, and a portfolio of clients that I thought, you know what, let's just go for it. Let's launch a company. Let's see how it goes. It's in a pandemic, so it could go one way or the other. And it luckily went the right way. And I'm sat here in my offices, which we opened 2 months ago in May, or 3 months ago in May, which was a huge achievement for me. I always said I wanted to open my first offices before I turn 18. And one of the biggest things I do now is set goals. I think setting goals is really important. And that's kind of how I've got to where I am, through passion, determination, and setting goals, but also nowadays not letting anybody get in the way of my dreams. And I think that's a really important message today to anybody listening, that as long as if you have a dream, brilliant, but you need to set goals and objectives to get to those dreams. Everybody can dream, but it's important to achieve those dreams as well, because we're only here once and we're here to enjoy life and do the nice things.
Absolutely. And now, Oliver, you already give us like a glimpse of what was school like for you. You mentioned something about bullying, but I want to hear from you. What was school like to you, and in relation to, let's say, academics? Would you say that because I believe that you're already in a generation now that it's seem to be the trendy thing that everyone goes to university, and you're quite unique in that way, that you seem confident that you don't need to go to university to be a success. So I was just wondering, what do you think school was like? Was it do you think that teachers were not teaching you real life applications, or do you think what you were learning from school doesn't match the demands of the current job market?
Yeah, so when I was at school, something, I actually really enjoyed certain lessons, especially English, and I wouldn't know half the things I do know without school. So for that, I'm grateful. But for the other part of it, I think school lacks realization of the modern workforce and the modern economy. You look at Manchester and London, and you look at how many people under the age of 30 with absolutely nothing other than passion are killing it in their industries. It's fantastic. And it's evident that what people, and by people I mean what my clients and what other people's clients want to see, is that they can do the job well and they can do it to the best of their ability. And they're not bothered about how old that person is, or what GCSEs they have, or do they have an A in geography, or do they have a B in science. If you can do a job and you can do it really well, then that's far more important nowadays. In school, some subjects I absolutely loved. As I've just said, English was fantastic. Business, obviously. Those are the things. Done performing arts. I enjoyed both sides of English, so English lit and English language. I thought it was very interesting. And yeah, there was, PE I absolutely hated. I'm not kind of a sporty person. However, I now work in the sports sector, so I have quite a few clients in the fitness and sports space, which is really interesting, because that's one of the things I was often bullied on, was I didn't really engage in sport. So I wasn't, as I said earlier, your typical lad. And so I kind of stuck out like a sore thumb in a school in West Cumbria. But yeah, so I wouldn't say, I'm obviously not an academic, but I wouldn't say just because, this is the message to everyone, just because somebody doesn't have grades doesn't mean they're not intelligent or they're not articulate or they're not, a team player or employable. And I think the biggest thing at the minute is school and university do not teach you how to be, teach you to be employable. They do not teach you to be a team player, be a good communicator, and be able to work a room with 250 people in. And I think that's really important. And I think something that really annoys me is at schools, when young people are sat on their phones at break time or lunchtime or at home, or they're sat, watching documentaries, that's shunned away as a bad thing. Actually, it's probably the best thing ever, because now the most in-demand services and industries are social, digital, and kind of entertainment. It's never been greater before than in 2021, and I think that's something schools perhaps lack to teach. And something, I come from a family of well-educated people. Both my sisters graduated with degrees a couple of years ago, and I'm not from an anti-education, and I'm not anti-education. I just think it should be diversified, and we should be championing new subjects, new areas of expertise that are in demand. And actually, we should be saying education is very important, because it is, but we shouldn't be putting pressure on young people younger than me, that actually if you don't get this and this and this, you're going to be a failure, because that's actually factually wrong. And if you look at some of the biggest entrepreneurs in the world who aren't from a silver spoon background, who have got nothing, who have had no investment, now own some of the biggest companies in the world and employ lots of people, and that is fantastic. They're creating opportunities by having dreams themselves with nothing to back them up. And actually, in a year and a few months I've been in business, I've been nothing other than supported by the business community in my area, and further afield. I've got clients all around the UK, and they're just so supportive, because I will just crack on and get the job done to the best of my ability. And that's what matters nowadays. Granted, in some sectors, it is really important to have qualifications and have years of coursework and experience. I get that. There's many industries where that's so necessary, but actually in the modern industries, what's becoming more important is experience, contacts, and a wealth of knowledge. And knowledge is power at the minute, and knowledge doesn't necessarily have to be taught through textbooks and at school, sat in a row with another load of students. It can be learned from Netflix documentaries, YouTube, Googling, reading about other people. You can turn on Spotify, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and listen to so many inspiring and motivating people now in your industry. And that's far more powerful than learning out of a textbook, if you ask me.
Absolutely. And I'd like to echo what you mentioned, that we're not really undermining the value of education, as like what you've said, that workforce that really relies on, rigorous academic training. You can't really expect your GP not to be, properly trained. Whereas if it's marketing, or if it's, any other related sector, it's better that you kind of equip yourself with necessary skills by, learning the trade, so to speak. But Oliver, what would you say if there's some young people listening who are not sure whether going to university is for them? What made you decide that, hang on, going to university is not for me, but I'm better off setting up a business? How did you identify that that's the trajectory that you want to take on?
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't said I will never go to university. I might go to university in 10 years' time or something. But I think in the now, I made the decision because I came out of school. I had no GCSEs, and I was being homeschooled for a couple of months, and then along came the pandemic. It was just an opportunity that arose in my circumstances. It wasn't luck, and it wasn't, because of anybody helping me. It was because I just spotted an opportunity for somebody young and fresh-faced in my county, Cumbria, in the Lake District, that there wasn't anybody like me doing what I do in Cumbria. There was tons of people doing it in the cities and, in other areas of the country, in the world, but there wasn't anybody right here. So I spotted a business opportunity and I kind of went with it, and it works really well. So I don't know where I'm going to end up, and I don't know whether I will go to university in the future. I may well do, because there's fantastic things like study at home courses now where you can do in your evening time and things like that. And I think the credibility of degrees are enormous, But at the minute, they seem to be drifting away because, as you say, near enough everybody goes to university now, and it's almost taking the credibility and the prestige away of a degree because a lot of people just go for it. And a lot of people go because they have a passion. Fantastic. You cannot knock that if somebody's got a passion and they want to go and get further education. Whereas some other people, and they will happily admit it, just go because it's 4 years, it's the best time of their lives, it's, you know, it's great. And that's, to me, that's what upsets me, because I think we should be encouraging people to invest 4 years of what they want to do or what they think they might want to do. Because again, I'm all for people chopping and changing their careers as and when, because look, you can't stick with something for too long, you'll get bored of it, right? But I think it's important to encourage people to do things that they're passionate about. And if they haven't got passion, unfortunately, I don't think people can go anywhere without passion. I think it's such a powerful thing. And I use it time and time again whenever I do chats like this, but passion and determination is definitely the number two, the two things that have got me here, sitting chatting with you today. So yeah, so I hope that helps.
Now, Oliver, you mentioned that you are young and fresh face in the industry, and this, I suppose, you use it to your advantage. But have you ever experienced age discrimination? You know, so some people tend to put you in a stereotypical box that you're young, you're not experienced, you don't know what you're doing. Have you ever experienced that? And if so, how did you handle that situation?
It's actually really nice that you've asked me that question, because on Sunday evening, on bank holiday, I was at my local pub, and yeah, I experienced it there and then, and I felt somebody was being really, really dismissive. And although he didn't directly say, oh, mention my age, I could tell he was. And people often overlook us young people, and it's a shame, because actually, you know, his boss thinks I'm fantastic. And I know that sounds cringy, and I'm not being arrogant, I'm just saying how it is, because there is a lot of people that hate young people in industries, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people are used to the process and kind of, you know, joining a company really young as a junior member of the team and working your way up, whereas I've kind of, you know, rushed, if you like, into being, you know, the managing director of my own company and hiring other people, whereas that's not normally what happens. And I think in West Cumbria in particular, because it doesn't happen so much around here, one or two people do question it, they do ask about it, you know, they are quite dismissive of my ideas or my passion, and it kind of affects me there and then, and I was really downbeat about it for the evening. And then you know, yesterday, although it was bank holiday Monday, I woke up with a fresh face, ready to take on my next challenge, because that's what gets me out of bed. You know, I come to the office, I see what we are creating, I'm passionate, and there'll always be haters. There'll be haters no matter what you're doing, what sector, whether you're a musician, whether you're an artist, a journalist, an engineer, a GP, the critics will come out one time in your career. And for some people, it's constantly. And I do get quite a few critics. You get people on social media as well who you can tell follow you, but they only interact with your negative posts. You know what I mean? So you always get them no matter what you're doing. But I think it's actually highlighted being quite young, and people think you're, oh, well, I'm just going to have a go at him because he's that young, he won't know how to respond. So yeah, the way I deal with it is I probably get a bit upset about it in the moment, in the evening, and then I'll sleep on it, and I'll wake up and I'll just start fresh again.
Absolutely. You know, when you said that there will always be critics, that really strongly resonates with me, because, you know, with the sector that I'm working on, you know, YouTube and blogging. I remember the first time that I received, you know, I call it fan mail now, whether it's negative or positive, I just call it fan mail. The first time I received my fan mail that telling me that, you know, I should just shut down my YouTube and I should just, shut down my blog because it's gutter press. That really affected me. But right now, I actually looking forward to reading some of those, because it gives the impression that you're paying attention to what I'm doing. So it must be really valuable what I'm doing. But yeah, like what you've said, it's so easy for people to criticize, but to create is something else. So that's what you should bear in mind, that, you know, you don't really listen to someone who hasn't created something. If you've created something, then I think your criticism has more value. Now, Oliver, let's talk about your company, Platinum Live. Tell us about, for those who hasn't heard of Platinum Live, tell us more about what sort of sector it is, and also what's behind the name. I'm quite intrigued. It's kind of, it has a fascinating sound to it, Platinum Live. Tell us more about your company.
Yeah, so actually, I'm horrendous at choosing business names. It's just it just isn't my thing. So I had a few other small businesses from when I was a really young age, and I always put platinum in front of it for some reason, probably because the domain was available. But yeah, platinum. I always used to use it for lots of different other businesses. I DJ'd from the age of 10, private gigs, private events, and I'd done that for about 3 or 4 years as well. Then I worked on festivals, events, etc. So, and live, because we like to think our work is live, it's present, it's reactive, it's bold, and obviously we work in the areas mainly we work in is digital marketing, social media, PR, so traditional media, but also digital PR. And then we also work in live events. So all those kind of things, especially PR, live obviously resonates. You're live on the telly, you're live on the radio, so that fits quite nicely. Platinum is usually associated with the best, so quite cringy, but we kind of thought, oh, the best PR or the best whatever. So yeah, and we work with such a wide range of clients. As I say, we work with people in the sports sector, we work with PTs, we work with gym brands, and we work with food supplement brands, but then we also work with e-commerce clients. We work with financial advisors, accountants, and we work with all sorts of people, and that's what I really like is the diversity in my work. So one morning we could be overseeing a television interview for a client who was commenting on the national news agenda, something about COVID. The next, I might be doing an interview, or another client might be on the radio, or we might be doing a social media campaign, or we might be on a promo video shoot, or we might be overseeing some content creation, or getting in some new branding, or organizing a new brochure, or looking at social strategy. All these things I just love. I'm really passionate about every single one of them, and that's what gets me up out of bed every day, because every day is so different, so many different things going on, lots of catch-ups and meetings and coffees and working lunches, and I just really enjoy it. And I really enjoy the people I'm surrounded by, my work colleagues, but also the people I commute with. Andrea, she's fantastic. And yeah, I just love what I do, love my clients, love the line of work, and I think it's an awesome industry as well, and it's very progressive. So this industry wasn't, well, especially social media. PR obviously was. PR has been around for decades, but social media is obviously quite a new industry, and it's exciting to be part of that as well.
Absolutely. And as you've said, this is really a dynamic, fast moving business. But I was just wondering, Oliver, how did your business cope with COVID? Because obviously you rely on other sectors as well, which has been heavily impacted by the COVID. So did it work on your favor, or was it against you? How did you handle the lockdown?
Yeah, so I actually launched the company a week into the first national lockdown on the 30th of March 2020. So I was already taking a bit of a punt at it. And again, passion, determination gets you wherever. And I think that was really important. For a couple of months, the work was quite quiet. And then kind of the back end of summer last year, things started to get busier and busier and busier. And I think there'll always be a need for marketing, whether a company's doing going through a hard time, or and if they're a product-based business, never get rid of your marketing team or your PR team or your social team, because that's ultimately what keeps your business alive. So there was still that, and then come January this year, things again started to accelerate, and just since January things have grew and grew and grew, because we find clients, when they're looking at the comeback from COVID, one place they don't want to be lacking is on their social and PR. So actually we've had a bit of an advantage there. And again, we like to be very bespoke with our clients. We work with huge companies, we work with individuals, we work with TV talent, gurus, professionals, but then we also work with small businesses. And again, that's what I really like about the line of my work. I work with all sorts of different people. And COVID, it's kind of been a bit annoying with the lockdowns. Sometimes we've had to cancel a few events here and there and cope with that. And that's a real shame. But I think now everybody's just ready to get on with it. Let's go for it. Let's open back up and do as much as we can.
Now, Oliver, I get the sense that one of the crucial aspects of the services that you're offering to your clients is social media. So let's talk about social media marketing from someone who uses social media a lot. Can you give us some tips when it comes to social media marketing? What are the major do's and don'ts?
Yeah, it's really interesting actually. So that's probably social media is one of my USPs as a business owner because I'm so young and I've never, ever since I was born in the early 2000s, I've always been surrounded by technology. I have been everywhere you go, service stations, school, the library, the supermarket, offices, at your home, you're constantly surrounded by technology. And then kind of 2011, 12, social media started to become this big thing. And I've always had social media. I love it. I'm really passionate about it. LinkedIn, especially, I've started to really like again. I went off it a few years ago. I just thought it was a bit tedious, but I think it's changing, which is great. And I think consistency above anything else. And I'm not an expert at every single platform. For example, LinkedIn isn't my biggest thing, whereas Facebook, because Facebook's so relevant around here, it's one of the biggest social media platforms in Cumbria for locals. I obviously invest a lot of my time into that. And I think just being relatable, so relatable above anything else. And I think one thing I like to do is showcase my work, and people like to see you. A lot of the time, whenever I engage in press activities or interviews, I will share that on my social media because, again, people like that. It looks really credible and it shouts, it speaks volumes of your business. So yeah, I think consistency, being creative, but being reactive to what's going on. We put out a lot of content for our clients that is relatable to what's going on and what people are talking about on Twitter. So whether it's Love Island or whether it's, another TV show that everyone's talking about and the memes, well, we will jump on that for them and we'll get relevant things out that's going to, shoot up their engagement and make sure they're really relevant and they're dominating their space in their industry is really important for us.
And just to add on to that, when we talk about social media, because I also heavily rely on social media with what I'm doing, but I think there's a misconception that you always have to be present with all social media. I limit my social media presence into three: Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And I'm kind of ambivalent when it comes to LinkedIn because I'm not really getting enough traffic from that. But you don't really have to be present to all of them. Like they say that you have to be on Instagram. It doesn't work for your platform. I think what really is important to understand here is that, with guidance from people who work on your sector, like people from Platinum Life, you have to understand what your target audience is, and you don't have to be necessarily present to all of them. Like TikTok, it doesn't work for me because I've got a different on target audience. But just to follow up on this topic about social media, I also want to hear from you. What about branding? What makes you think? What makes a good brand? What makes a good logo?
Yeah, so it's really important nowadays to realize that actually your logo and branding doesn't have to be ridiculously complex. Simplicity is one of the biggest things as well. I think you look at some of the biggest brands in the world, Nike, Adidas, Apple, they don't have very extravagant and complex logos. Simplicity is very powerful, whatever you're doing. And I think your brand isn't just your logo like that. It's actually your tone of voice, how you speak, how you engage, and what you talk about. For example, there's lots of CEOs, leaders, business directors who are on LinkedIn, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter or Instagram, and they talk more generally about life, about motivation, about their ups and their downs. And I think a brand isn't just a logo or it isn't just a website. It's lots of things. It's a group of different assets that you put in to make it really strong. For example, for us, Platinum Live, it's very important, yes, to have a logo that looks well and the website looks nice and it's neat and tidy, but also to engage in press and engage in social media and do videos and do podcasts and interviews. It all plays a big part of it. Obviously, the larger your company goes, the less you do in terms of interviews and things, because other people will do that for you and other people will build your brand as well. But I think also a lot of companies now, when they hire people, their team is their brand as well. Their employees are their brand. How they talk about them on social media, that's your brand. And what people, when you say platinum lives to people, what do they think? Do they think fun, creative, disruptive, cool, fresh-faced, modern? Because that's what we want, that's what we want to kind of put across. And I think, yeah, as I say, your brand is everything at the end of the day, but it doesn't have to be such a complex thing that everybody worries about. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I do agree with that. That when it comes, I think gone are the days when we have those logos which are really ornate and intricate. Right now, it's just a choice between a good font and a simple design. So it really resonates with me with what you've said. That's why I personally designed the logo of PsychReg. And I really I keep those things in mind that you just have to be simple and have bold colors. Now, of course, Oliver, with Platinum Live, you do help businesses to scale up within the sector. So, from your experience, what would you say are the biggest mistakes made by startup entrepreneurs? Because I would imagine a lot of people that you're helping, startups. Or am I right on that? But what would you say are the biggest mistakes when it comes to running a business?
Yeah, I think actually what we've just mentioned is probably one of the biggest mistakes, because I hear so many people all the time on Facebook and things say they have this fantastic business idea, or some of our early startup clients come to us and they've got this brilliant idea, and it's just like, oh yes, that's fantastic. And then they spend months and months and months and months and months pondering on the idea. Oh, should we take it to market? Should we wait? Should we go for investment? Should we design 1,000,000 logos and try and decide from more than 2 logos? And well, oh, does this color work? Does this color not work? And people just faff. And I think at the minute, faffing is the biggest drawback for startups. You have to have a strategy to things. You have to make sure you're investing your time in the right things that's going to get you, onto your next goal, or, ahead of the curve. But it's also important just not to faff and not to overthink. It's good to put time to things and make sure it is a valid idea and it's the right thing to do. But too much time spent pondering on an idea is time wasted where you could have been scaling that idea. Time is the biggest killer at the minute, and that's probably one of the biggest errors we see, is people just misusing their time, to be honest.
Absolutely. And now let's talk about how you look after your own mental health. What's your self-care practices? How do you manage adversity and doubt, Oliver?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't do anything in particular. I make sure I do something I like every week, whether it be, I love going out to eat, I love going for a meal with a friend, but also I quite like walking with my dog. So whenever I'm feeling really, really, really rubbish, I will take Woody out for a walk, or I will go out on my bike, or go down to the beach, or do something in the fresh air. I don't do it too often, but when I do it, it's meaningful. And it really helps me clear the airways, clear the vibes. And I like to make sure I'm spending time with people who I appreciate and who are kind, and who like similar things to me. I think it's important who you surround yourself with.
Absolutely. And of course, needless to say, because you're based in Cumbria, you really got lovely nature there. So you can really benefit that when it comes to rejuvenating your vibe. Now, Oliver, what's your advice for those who want to follow your footsteps?
I think my biggest advice is go for it. If you have a cool idea and people have said it's cool, go with it. However much time and effort you have to put into it, as long as you're going to deliver, it'll be worth it. I think so many of us, as said previously, have fantastic business ideas, but we do nothing with it. And if you don't build your own dreams, somebody else is going to hire you to build theirs. And I think that's quite powerful, because we're here once, so let's live it. Let's do the things we enjoy. As I say, I'm all for career changes. 10 years time, we might chat again, Dennis, and I might be doing something completely different. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's quite an exciting thing. Life is meant to be exciting. There's millions upon millions of people on this planet, and there's millions of things to do. Go out there, chase it, whatever you want to do, whatever sector, put your mind to it, put your passion and your determination, and quite simply just kill it.
Absolutely. And Oliver, who inspires you both professionally and personally? Who's your inspiration?
I think personally, my grandparents, and I have one grandparent on either side left. So I've got my granddad on my dad's side and my grandma on my mum's side. and they inspire me a lot. You know, I think often when I think about our generation, and although I love it, sometimes I question it. You know, my elders, I really look up to them and what they went through, you know, when they were my age, and the wars and how difficult life was, and the lack of communication and the lack of technology that we all take for granted nowadays. They really are my inspiration, and they love when you're in the paper, they love when you're on TV, they think it's brilliant, and I love making them proud. I think professionally, it's a mix of people. I'm just inspired by everybody who is doing something they enjoy. But I think one of my biggest inspirations is probably Stephen Bartlett. He's just fantastic and he's so motivating. But also I quite like Peter Jones as well, and Sarah Davies, the two Dragon's Den. Well, actually, all three of them are now Dragon's Den stars, because Stephen is going on in, I think it's January, his new season starts. So he's the youngest ever to go on Dragon's Den, which is so cool. You know what I mean? And he's such a big inspiration, the way he's kind of had an idea, turned it into a shining success, sold the company, and now he has this fantastic podcast. So he is really cool. He's really inspiring. And the content that he puts out, if you don't follow him, give him a follow, because it is quite get up and go. It gives you that self-esteem, and I think that's really important. But yeah, they're my inspirations, but definitely above anything, my grandparents are my biggest inspiration.
Absolutely. And Oliver, what do you think you would be doing if you didn't work within marketing? Would you say you would have been a DJ?
That's a good question. And to be honest, you're not the first who's asked me that. Yeah, so I think I'd always be in business some way, shape or form. From a very young age, I was obsessed with business, Dragon's Den, The Apprentice. You couldn't escape it. When I was about 9, I used to sell all the advertising in my school newspaper. And that was interesting. I always walked through my village selling adverts to the local businesses, and it was really cool. And then I DJ'd from the age of 10. You will literally never be as rich as an 11-year-old making £200 a night. And when you have no other worries in the world, that was the best time ever. But yeah, I've always kind of had this kind of business interest. I'm really passionate about it. I'm passionate about making a success out of your ideas. So I think one way or another, I'd always be involved in a business, owning one especially.
And finally, Oliver, the floor is all yours. Tell us what else in the pipeline. If people wanted to reach out to you, what platforms can they get in touch with you at?
Definitely. So I'm on everything. I don't put all of my effort into every single platform, but you will find me on the typical Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. So feel free to reach out. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a virtual coffee and catch up. I always love listening to people. I love hearing their stories. So do come and tell me your stories as well. And yeah, I think we've got a lot of things in the pipeline. We've got a lot of exciting projects. We're announcing a huge new project next Monday, which will be really exciting. So yeah, that'll be on my socials for sure. That's happening in November, so that's going to be really cool. And again, I think at the minute we're just having some really interesting conversations with some new clients who are going to be great. And I think now that we're coming out of the pandemic, I just want to put as much passion and determination into my business as possible. And hopefully we can accelerate the growth, accelerate opportunity, accelerate new services and people being young and modern. So yeah, that's what I'm up to. And as I said, feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, thank you, Oliver. Now, what I'll do is I'll pop in those links, especially the link to Platinum Live. So for anyone, as you've put it, who's looking for ways to accelerate their business, they can get in touch with you and they can discuss it. Oliver Hodgson, it's a pleasure having you here on the DRH show, but unfortunately, time is against us. I look forward to hearing more about your work.
Thank you very much, Dennis.